No story ever written for the screen is as dramatic as the story of the screen itself.
The First Amendment of the United States Constitution states that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. The question of who this right protects has been regularly debated over the past 2 centuries. In 1915, the U.S. Supreme Court heard its first case related to the issue of film censorship. In a unanimous decision, the court ruled that film is a completely commercial pursuit and is therefore not protected by this First Amendment right. In the years that followed, the film industry operated under the Motion Picture Production Code, a set of rules developed by the filmmakers to demonstrate their responsibility to protect the public. In 1952, the issue of First Amendment rights for filmmakers again came before the U.S. Supreme Court. In another unanimous decision, the court overturned their previous ruling. In a case involving a foreign film aptly named The Miracle, the court officially granted First and 14th Amendment rights to motion pictures. While filmmakers now had complete freedom to realize their artistic vision, the Motion Picture Association of America believed that it still had a responsibility to protect its audiences from exposure to mature content. In 1968, the MPAA introduced a film rating system. Without the efforts of the MPAA and the film industry's willingness to self-censor through its movie rating system, filmmakers might not have the right to free expression that they enjoy today. Ever since there has been art, there have been artists trying to push the boundaries of acceptability. In this constant effort to go beyond, every artist will come into opposition with people who wish to censor the attempted artistic expression and ban exposure to and consumption of this media. With the introduction of motion pictures in the late 19th century, few people realized the impact that film could have on its audiences. In 1907, the city of Chicago enacted the first film censorship law in America. In response to this, a collection of prominent theater owners and distributors, including Edison, Biograph, Pathé, and Gaumont, joined John Collier of the People's Institute in 1909 to explore formation of a voluntary board of censorship to regulate films. Their goal was to eliminate obscene pictures and pictures of crime for crime's sake from the New York Moving Picture Show. This was the first time that the film industry attempted to take responsibility for the material presented in motion pictures. In parallel, several states and cities formed their own censorship processes for film. But, as these review boards multiplied, the industry began to push back. In 1915, the Mutual Film Corporation came into the eye of the court. Mutual was a film distributor that was looking to show movies in the state of Ohio. Ohio had set up its own board of censorship. Mutual stated that the law requiring state censorship was unconstitutional and brought the Industrial Commission of Ohio to court. This case made its way to the U.S. Supreme Court. In a unanimous decision, the court ruled against Mutual, allowing state and local censorship to continue. Speaking for the court, Justice Joseph McKenna stated that the exhibition of motion pictures is a business pure and simple. The court decided that films were not protected by First Amendment rights. This ruling left the responsibility of film censorship in the hands of state and municipal censorship authorities. In 1922, a series of events tarnished the image of Hollywood. The major studios banded together to start the Motion Pictures Producers and Distributors of America, MPPDA. This group was formed with the intent of advancing the business interests of its members. The first president of the organization was William H. Hayes. When Congress considered the possibility of forming a federal motion picture commission, the MPPDA responded by introducing a loose set of moral guidelines, which came to be known as the Don'ts and Be Carefuls. In October of 1929, several prominent Catholic laypeople, including Joseph Breen, a journalist, met to discuss the possibility of starting a self-censorship board in order to hold the industry responsible for the work that was created. When Breen and his associates brought their ideas to the MPPDA, they were met with enthusiasm. In fact, Hayes later remarked, "My eyes nearly popped out. This was the very thing I had been looking for." The text of A Code to Maintain Social and Community Values and the Production of Silent, Synchronized, and Talking Motion Pictures was ratified on March 31, 1930. The Motion Picture Production Code came to be known as the Hayes Code. It would apply to all movies, newsreels, and cartoons produced by the industry. Once adopted, it became clear that the code looked much better on paper than it was in practice. Many of those who had agreed to comply immediately began violating the protocols. This continued until 1934, when Breen was named head of the new Production Code Administration, PCA. For the next decade and a half, the film industry operated under the Hays Code. As head of the PCA, Breen single-handedly controlled the film industry's output. In fact, a 1936 Liberty magazine article remarked that Breen has more influence in standardizing world thinking than Mussolini, Hitler, or Stalin. This period also saw much change for the MPPDA. Will Hays left the organization in 1945 and was replaced by Eric Johnston. Within his first year of holding the position, Johnston rebranded the MPPDA as the Motion Picture Association of America, MPAA. In 1952, another case of film censorship rights came into the public eye. The case was Joseph Burston Incorporated versus Wilson, and related to the distribution of an Italian picture called The Miracle. The Miracle dealt with issues that were seen to be indecent and sacrilegious by religious groups. Joseph Burston, a prominent film distributor, fought to allow the film to be screened and was granted rights to show it by the New York Supreme Court. Religious groups were unhappy with the decision and began to boycott theaters showing the film. Following this boycott, another effort was made to revoke the film's license. The New York Board of Regents reviewed the film and consensually ruled that it was sacrilegious. From here, the case was elevated to the U.S. Supreme Court. This was the first time since the 1915 Mutual case that the court had agreed to hear arguments on a film-related matter. In a unanimous decision, they determined that expression by means of motion pictures is included within the free speech and free press guarantee of the First Amendment, and that the liberty which the First Amendment guarantees against abridgment by the federal government is safeguarded by the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment from invasion by state action. Speaking for the majority, Justice Tom Clark stated that motion pictures are a significant medium for the communication of ideas. The Miracle case overturned the prior Mutual decision and gave freedom to the artist without the fear of government censorship. By the 1960s, full artistic rights of filmmakers had been realized.
Everything was wide open, so films could become socially conscious, politically conscious. Films could criticize.
While the film industry continued to operate under the Hays Code, by 1966, the industry was beginning to move away from these constraints. Eric Johnston had passed away in 1963, and the MPAA finally hired Jack Valenti as its new president in 1966. His first order of business was to draft a film rating system to replace the Hays Code. He felt that self-regulation would provide a middle ground between protecting the rights of filmmakers and upholding the industry's responsibility to consumers for its movies. On November 1st, 1968, this film rating system was implemented. This system was to be enforced by an internal body dubbed the Classification and Rating Administration. The film rating system from 1968 is very close to the one that is currently in place. Many other countries continue to operate with both a film rating system and national censorship board. Influenced by the film industry, other media have instituted their own rating systems as well. These attempts at self-regulation have been introduced in an effort to balance the artistic rights of the designer and the responsibility to protect the public. Moreover, recent studies have shown that the rating system is becoming more lax. Films containing images of sexual activities, drug use, and profane language typically receive more stringent ratings, while films with images of gun violence tend to receive more leeway in their ratings.
If a film is initially rated an R, there are times when people will fight to get that knocked back down to a PG-13 because, you can broaden the audience by that. So they'll make changes to a film.
The introduction of the film rating system revolutionized filmmaking and the ability of the filmmaker to make art. In two Supreme Court cases, the Mutual case in 1915 that established a precedent for film censorship, and the Miracle case in 1952 that overturned the previous decision, the rights of filmmakers were discussed and established. Throughout the last century, several systems of self-censorship have been practiced in order to balance the rights of filmmakers with the responsibility they hold to the viewing public. With the creation of the MPAA film rating system in 1968, filmmakers were able to secure their artistic freedom while demonstrating their responsibility to protect audiences from exposure to mature content. Without the efforts of Will Hays, Joseph Breen, Jack Valenti, and the entire Motion Picture Association of America, as well as the film industry's willingness to self-censor through the movie rating system, filmmakers may never have attained full rights to realize their artistic vision.